Now, there have been a lot of controversies about what we've done with the exchange rate. Talk to us a lot about this, and I'm sure there was this dialogue 2 days ago here in Lagos, Nigeria Economic Summit Group and the DFID, very heated debate, quite emotional, about what central bank has done managing the exchange rate. And you talk about the accident, the air ambulance, and the hospital. Put these three together for us once again.
The exchange rate is like the pulse of a human being, right? When your pulse rate goes up or goes down, and when you die, your pulse stops, right? So the economic patient, in this case, we were hit by dropping oil price, so there was an accident, okay? We're on the site of the accident, and the central bank is trying to stabilize us by saying, look, you can't allow the blood to flow, so let's stop
the hemorrhage
immediately, okay? And so it says 41 items you cannot bring in. And then we are in transit to the hospital.
For proper medical attention.
Yeah, so paramedics are looking at us as we're going along and saying that, okay, well, you can do this, we can pay this, we can pay that. Because JP Morgan Index comes and takes us out. So we have further turbulence as we're going along towards the hospital. The issue is that you can't run a patient in the hospital like you ran him on the site of an accident. Now we are in the hospital, we now need to take a long-term view, and we have to look for a mechanism for determining our exchange rate management. So what are the issues? The issue are, one, is 199 a fair value for the Naira today? If it was, then people will be selling to us, and people will not be buying from us. One. Two, the parallel market is so small, but it also indicates and leads the official market in that direction, putting pressure. Is there enough liquidity to supply the market, even for those legitimate transactions? Banks say they have a lot of demand which has not been met. So that's an issue. Now, thirdly, more important is the fact that we need an exchange rate determining mechanism rather than just an exchange rate. How are we going to go forward and determine what is right? Is it 199? Is it 195? Is it 150? Or is it 220? Basically, every 5 years we have a stability of exchange rate, then we make an adjustment based on where the oil price is. Now, the truth is that Angola has done 19% depreciation of the currency this year. They've removed fuel subsidies, right? And their reserves are built up to $24 billion. And they have reserves of $2,000 per head compared to Nigeria's $179 per head. So what do we have to do? Now you have a cabinet. You will have a budget, supplementary budget. Nigeria will come to terms with how it wants to determine fuel pricing, increase productivity due to power supply. And then it will be easier to make an adjustment on the currency, which may not be as wide or as huge as is feared today. So we don't think that the adjustment required in the currency is going to be that major. But you have to have an adjustment and a mechanism to constantly review this so that Nigerians don't suffer. A situation where goods cannot come in because payments are not being made and confirmation lines are being redeemed or reduced is not good for Nigeria. But the central bank has done as best it could in circumstances. If there was no abrupt measures, your reserves today would have been at $24 billion or $23 billion. So in the circumstances, you have to do something. It's like having a snake bite and they have to use whatever it is to tie the point so that
when it happens in the forest.
And then you cut. Then when you get to the hospital, we now treat you properly. Now, that is the situation. Nigeria has to accept that we have a crisis, a foreign currency crisis situation, which is being managed as best as we can. After that, we will then manage it normally.
We got a lot to talk about in this section of the show. Yes. I want us to move on quickly. This will interlace each other as we move on. Talk to us about the human development factors. We're going to get to President Buhari's speech yesterday. But before that, let's look at the human development factors we're looking at between May 29 and May 30. Unemployment, misery index, very interesting. Power output, price of diesel. If you take the price of diesel from 160 to 110, that's about 31.3% positive.
Yes. So listen, if you look at the macro, the hard numbers, There were more negatives than positives. If you look at the other issues, this is where there's a lot of positive. Unemployment is up, so it's negative, 2.4%. Misery index is up, which is negative, more people miserable, 8.8%. But power output up, 43%, huge, from 3,200 to 4,500 megawatts. And this is between May and now. Price of diesel down from 160 to 110 because people are not using a generator, so there's excess supply. 31% positive. So if you take power output positive 43%, diesel price positive 31%, then vacancy factor, people who have houses and cannot get tenants, that's gone up. That's negative 12% and 5% negative in Victoria Island as well. It was 19% in May, it's up to 31%. It was 11% in May, it's up to 16%. Now, insurgency in a Boko Haram area has reduced significantly. So from the human development factor perspective, Nigeria has done very well. The only two areas that need to be looked at, unemployment, which ties in with inflation, and the misery index.
So when you say we have a misery index and you think Nigeria is, well, try to use this question, more miserable than they ever were, what exactly were the factors and indicators we're talking about?
Misery index is inflation plus unemployment. So if you're unemployed and the price of goods go up, you become more miserable. Right?
Yeah, because you can't afford.
You can't afford. Even the little you have cannot pay for anything. So anytime you add that together and you measure the misery index from quarter to quarter. So in this last quarter, we've had a deterioration in the misery index. It must go up in the following quarter, which means that unemployment will reduce and inflation will reduce. If that happens at the end of December, then we are good. Because you cannot have, if you have 3 consecutive quarters of deterioration in misery index, it means that the political goodwill of that administration is being threatened. Okay,
so let's talk about President Buhari's speech of yesterday. This 2-page document, and I'm sure you listened to him, and of course you've done a few analysis of that. And I'm going to read a few things here, and what does it mean about what the president said and the things he didn't say. Yes. Look at the paragraphs. The third to the last paragraph, the president talked about the impatience of Nigerians and apparent delay and anxiety over forming a cabinet. This is what he says at the end of that sentence. He says, it would have been haphazard to announce ministers when the government had not finalized the number of ministries to optimally carry the burden of governance. End of quote. What is it that the president didn't say there? That's what he said, but what is it that he didn't say? I think
what he said and what he didn't say are the same. That is, your structure. First of all, your strategy drives your structure, not your structure driving your strategy. Everybody was talking about ministers, but he says, look, let me have my strategy right, and then the structure that will deliver on that strategy is what I'm going to have. So he decided that he's going to use, let's say for sake of argument, I'm going to have 21 ministers rather than 36, okay? Then I'm going to have maybe senior ministers and junior ministers because there are constitutional requirements. However, what ministries are going to have impact? What activities are going to have an impact on people's lives? Because Nigeria has a very poor conversion rate from GDP growth to well-being. So if he says I'm going to have infrastructure, transport, and works put together so that it's driven by somebody who can deliver, then the structure supports the strategy, and the person who is going to champion it will be able to deliver. So if you go back to what, there's a slide here which shows integrity and energy. So when you have high integrity, high energy, you get perfect outcomes. But if you have high integrity and low energy, you have negative outcomes. So what we are looking for are people in the quadrant which say, oh, look, there's high energy, medium integrity. I mean, integrity means medium or high integrity, right? But what you don't want is low energy and low integrity.
Put it in simple terms, that means we're going to have reduced number of ministries, federal ministries,
yes,
and reduced number of parastatals.
Yes, or no? No, rationalizing, so that because you can't afford it. The truth is that Nigeria, it's not what you wish to have, it's what you have to have, what you need to have. The reality is that you can't afford it. Your income is 60% lower than what it was 2 years ago.